Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are early in the 2038-2039 free agency period. We have made a couple of big moves, 3 trades overall, and we shipped out a lot of talent. We shipped out our number 5 starter, Isidro Ochoa. We shipped out a very solid bullpen arm in Yohane Varejo. But you look at the 4 guys at the top of our rotation right now, and the fact that we've got the youngster Eric Barbarito set to become our number 5 starter, and then you look at if we are able to re-sign Lorne Walbourne when he hits free agency, the top 5 guys that we have out of our bullpen. And I think that we are capable of overcoming both of those departures. They were arbitration eligible players who were starting to make pretty good money for what they were, and we needed to clear some salary from the books to hopefully re-sign Walborn when free agency begins. We also moved on from longtime center fielder Tim Gaglia. He had kind of lost that starting role when we picked up Max Clark as a rental July of this past season. But Clark, who is in his mid-30s, wrecked physically and looking for close to $30 million a year, was never in the mix for us. So we're going to be losing Clark at center field, and then we also traded away Gaglia. But our hope is that with the 2 guys we got back as our primary assets from the trades that we made, we'll be able to upgrade our offense. And our offense wasn't a huge problem. We were 3rd in runs scored last year, and we had the best pitching staff in baseball, but we were only 10th in home runs. So my hope is that particular bringing on Juan Romero as a new corner outfielder for us could help with that. The 26-year-old has a 127 WRC plus over the first 2 years of his career with Atlanta. Only 27 home runs over 252 games played. Got to 18 last year. Do feel like, according to our scout, he could have a little more home run pop when all is said and done. So our hope is he can become a 25 home run kind of guy, which if we go back to our batting leaders would make him the 2nd most proficient home run hitter on our team. The other guy that we picked up could end up being our new center fielder, and that is Nelson Rojas. Like him defensively, he's got a little bit of speed on the base paths, and he's another guy who could upgrade our team in terms of being able to hit the ball out of the park. He's the number 76 prospect in baseball, combined for 32 home runs last year between high A ball, double A, triple A in the majors. Unfortunately, his stint in the majors with the Marlins was his least successful. Hit just a .195 with 5 homers and 241 at-bats. Our hope is that he will ultimately be a more productive offensive player than Gaglia had been for us. So I think the goal in this episode is to get through award season, hopefully get the 3 arbitration-eligible players who remain on our team signed. Anderson and Edwards, as we talked about in our last episode, were 3rd and 2nd on our team in homers last year, and Mike Broaden was 3rd on our team in ribbies. So although those guys are all getting to the point where the money that they're going to be receiving in arbitration is certainly not an incredible value. Think that we want to keep them around rather than the 3 guys who are arbitration eligible that we're moving on from in Ochoa, Varejo, and Gaglia, given that I think our pitching staff hopefully will be just as good next year with sliding in Barbarito, letting Espinoza, another youngster, perhaps have a bigger role. Ben Borgen, who's came up through our system, could also have a bigger role, and we could still end up finding some talent in the Rule 5 draft or even free agency. So feel pretty confident that I'm going to like our pitching staff next year and doing everything possible to hopefully ensure that I like our offense a little bit better than I liked this year's offense when all is said and done in this offseason. As I mentioned, heading into award season now, not anticipating a lot of awards. Always hope to get a Silver Slugger and a Gold Glove here and there. I would think that our closer, Joe Scott, could be a contender for the Mariano Rivera Award, but probably won't win it. Rookie of the Year, Ben Elmquist may get a vote or two, but I don't think he's a legitimate candidate. And I certainly don't think we have a Cy Young Award or an MVP award winner this year. So probably will be a relatively quiet award season for our Buffalo Wings as we head towards the beginning of free agency. And our 3 arbitration-eligible players, as well as a number of minor league free agents, all signed contracts today. The fans excited to have Joe Edwards back. The fans are also happy to have Steve Anderson back. And the fans are happy to have Mike Broughton back as well. Also got our final minor leaguer pitching coach signed, Adrian Abar, who's going to be at our DSL team. Outstanding teaching pitching, excellent with development and mechanics, and also expected to have a good relationship down there. So we had to pay up to get him on board, $100,000 a year for 3 years, which is definitely expensive for a DSL pitching coach. We had made an initial offer that was less to him, and he came back and said he had a more attractive offer from another team. So we decided we really wanted to get him on board to hopefully help our young prospects who are international free agents and or scouting discoveries develop, and hopefully Abar will help us do that. And it ended up being a very quiet award season for our Buffalo Wings, despite having the best regular season in baseball. Alan Bowles did win Manager of the Year. He's won it 5 times now since or 4 times or 3. If I could count, that would help. He's won it 3 times in the majors since we moved on from managing ourselves and moved back to a general manager role. So he's won it each of the 3 seasons that he's been a manager for us. So congratulations to him, but no Gold Gloves and no Silver Sluggers this year. Mariano Rivera Award, we did get that as well. I thought we would potentially be a contender there, and Joe Scott ended up edging out Mike James. You remember we picked up Joe Scott about 9 months ago at this time in a trade with San Diego. 6-4 with a 1.60 ERA, 84 strikeouts in 67 1/3 innings, and 46 saves for us. Brilliant fastball and a brilliant cutter. His stuff is off the charts, movement pretty good, and his control is acceptable. Would love a little fewer than 32 walks in 67 1/3 innings next year. But Joe Scott is your 2038 Mariano Rivera Award winner. Best rookie, no votes at all for anyone on Buffalo. I thought that Ben Elmquist might get a vote or two, but he didn't probably play enough to be a real strong candidate. American League, Chris Lenig of the Mariners wins his 4th Cy Young Award. He's still coming back from elbow inflammation that occurred on his way to a World Series championship, but he has led the American League in wins 4 of the last 5 seasons and is now a 4-time Cy Young Award winner. In the National League, Jamie Arnold of the Rockies and Harlan Campeau of the Rockies, the only 2 guys who get first place votes. Arnold 17-6 with a 2.80 ERA, so a nice year for the 34-year-old, winning a Lifetime Achievement Award at his age with his first his first Cy Young Award. No Buffalo Wings among the top vote getters there. AL MVP is Max Ziger of the Las Vegas Athletics. Led the league with 129 ribbies while also hitting .321, 33 doubles, 6 triples, 37 homers, 18 steals, and a league best 7.5 WAR while compiling a 163 WRC+. And in the National League, it was Irving Barunda of the Montreal Expos, the 24-year-old left fielder, led the National League with 106 walks, a 443 on-base percentage, 992 OPS, 173 WRC plus, and an 8.2 WAR. Using his more old-school statistics, he batted .327 with 32 homers and 81 ribbies on his way to earning the MVP award. And very limited votes for our Buffalo Wings here, too, despite the big season we had. Only Juan Estrada, our two-way player, received any MVP votes. He was 10-5 with a 3.18 ERA as a pitcher. And as a hitter, he batted .307 with 34 doubles and 60 runs scored in 319 at-bats. So we've got a Manager of the Year, we've got a Mariano Rivera Award winner, but other than that, it was a very quiet award season for our Buffalo Wings. A bit surprising, again, given that we ended the year with the best record in baseball, but I think that's probably just a testament to a good, solid team across the 26-man lineup without a lot of superstars. Those superstars can help us win a title, though, so although we don't have a lot of flexibility to add a big contract this off-season, hopefully our minor league system and the big investments we've had in it in previous years, particularly last year, will start generating some potential superstars that can hopefully help push us to more playoff success. 11 consecutive years in the playoffs, 7 consecutive division titles at this year, but we have been bounced in the NLDS 2 consecutive years after winning 2 out of 3 World Series championships from 2034 to 2036. And as we approach salary arbitration hearings in just a few days and then free agency filings a couple days after that, check in with Lorne Walbourne one final time, still looking for the $10.25 million over 4 years with a player option in the 4th season that he's been asking for basically all off season. We are going to let our longtime stopper hit free agency with the hope that the amount he's looking for may be a little less than that on the open market. I know it's not logical that he would be on the open market and look for less, but as those of you who have played this game know, sometimes the logic around free agency and negotiations and leverage are not always intuitive or perfectly aligned with what might happen in the real world. And we've made it to the start of free agency. Looks like some of the top names on the list were the names we expected to see. Michael Harris II, Max Clark, Juan Soto, Mike Moore, and Chris Lenig, as Seattle is potentially losing 2 of the pitchers that helped lead them to a World Series championship and excellent pitching staff over the past several years. We are unlikely to be big players in free agency. Before we check in on what exactly Walborn is looking for, also take a quick look at the international free agents who are making the market. Sergio Lejía out of Cuba. It looks like a 5th starter, kind of a generic bullpen arm. We'll at least request a scouting report on him. Doesn't look like his salary demand is incredibly out of line, but also doesn't look like he's a potentially huge impact player either. Rushdie Munjai, South African catcher. Like the defense, question is whether he's going to hit enough to be a major leaguer, but we'll at least request a scouting report on the 27-year-old. Abraham Saucedo, similar situation. Excellent catcher ability, question the bat, 26 years old. but he's durable, has some positive personality traits. Looks like he'll consider a minor league contract, so we'll offer him a minor league contract right now. Also request a scouting report to get to know him better. And shortstop Hiroshi Hiraki. Interesting-ish prospect, 24 years old, so he's one of the younger international free agents. Not looking for crazy money. Looks like a guy who could be a utility infielder. Not a lot of home run power, and he's not going to walk a lot. But if he does fully develop, he's got decent contact, not going to strike out much. Has a profile where he could play a number of positions in the infield. So I'm going to at least request a scouting report on him. Contract-wise, he's only looking for a deal that becomes guaranteed if promoted, so that's not a horrible contract for us to consider. But we're going to hopefully have the scouting report come in and get to know him a little bit more before making any decisions on that front. Got a lot of money to spend and a lot of money potentially for extensions, but we do need to keep in mind that we have pared back our scouting and player development significantly and want those both to be higher when all is said and done. Now for the moment of truth. What is Mr. Walborn looking for on the open market? And he says he's looking for more, so a little bit surprising. Had some commenters who convinced me that the number would be less on the open market, and I wanted to see what happened. The logic for it being less was that he's only a 2-pitch guy, so he is certainly not in the mix to be a starter at all. His expectation was only to be in the bullpen, so it's not like he was going to be looking for closer money. But Walborn definitely appreciates the fact that he is a very valuable pitcher, especially to this Buffalo team. So we're probably going to cost ourselves a little bit of money to try to bring him back. In the comments to the last episode, Jackson Ferris was also mentioned as a guy to consider as a fallback. He is a lefty. He's got a little bit better stuff. His movement and his control are not as good as Walborn's is. My issue with Ferris, he's going to be 35 years old, so he's pretty well established. And whether you're looking at his ERA plus, his FIP minus, he's been a pretty average major league pitcher over the course of his career. Whereas Walborn, in contrast, has been a well above average pitcher over the course of his career with a 137 ERA plus and a 71 FIP minus after he made it to the majors as a relatively old rookie at 26 years old. So we'll have to think about exactly how we want to try to potentially structure a deal to Mr. Walborn. I do love the fact that he's been an incredibly high volume pitcher for us until he did have some injury issues this past year. He had led the National League in games and in holds every year for us since we put him into that stopper role while pitching about 140 innings a year over those years. So he has been a very valuable player the way that we've used him. But we'll have to think about whether signing him for bigger money than we potentially could have a few weeks ago is the right decision or not. And as much as I'd love to add a Chris Lenig or a Mike Moore onto our team with the money that they are looking for, that is just not realistic. Jackson Ferris, I'd like to do better than that, despite the fact that he's looking for a discount. But I don't think I want to bring Lorne Walbourne back at 12 plus million a year for 5 years. There's a chance we could probably get it down to 3 or 4. There's a chance we could get that player option for the final season out of there. But I'm looking for a guy who's younger and less expensive in the case of Nate Ruckle. And Ruckle intrigues me. He doesn't have the same type of stamina as Walborn, but a guy whose stuff is not quite as good, but his movement's even better, also has solid control. 3-pitch guy who could honestly start in a pinch. Not that I would intend him to do that. He's also a lefty, and he's only looking for about half as much money as Walborn at this point, and he's not looking for as many years either. Ruckle is a 2-time All-Star, 126 ERA plus and 80 FIP minus over the course of his career. I love what Lorne Walbourne has done for our team. He's a guy that we identified in that trade with the Dodgers as someone who we thought could be an excellent reliever for us, and he has fulfilled every hope that we had for how he would perform. But when I look at Walborn's profile and I compare Walborn's profile to Nate Ruckle's, it's pretty hard for me to justify bringing Walborn back over Nate Ruckle. And I know that obviously I could line these guys up next to one another to make it easier for these comparisons rather than me going back and forth. But Ruckle's stuff is just as good. His movement's better. His control's a little worse. Walborn certainly has more stamina, so I don't know that Ruckle becomes a 140 inning stopper for us, but could we get over 100 innings out of Ruckle as a stopper? I certainly think it's possible. Ruckle's sinker is better than any pitch that Walborn has. Now, Walborn does have those 2 excellent pitches in his fastball and his cutter. His fastball a bit better than Ruckle's, but Ruckle also has a screwball in the mix. Ruckle's actually even more popular in terms of, as Mad Dog Chris Russo would say, putting some fannies in the seats. So I think we are done with Lorne Walbourne. If he lingers on the market and the price comes down, which I'm not expecting, could we re-engage with him? Certainly. But right now, for almost $6 million a year less, as far as the price tag that they're asking for, I think Ruckle's the right way for us to go to bolster our bullpen. So Ruckle says he's asking for $6.5 million a year for 3 years with a player option in that final season. We're going to try to structure the deal a little bit more in our favor, and we'll see what he thinks of it. So Ruckle was looking for $6.5 million a year over 3 years with a player option for the final season. We are offering him 4 years at an average of $5.5 million, but team options for the 3rd and 4th season, and a contract that becomes progressively more manageable for us over the length of that contract. Don't know that this will be quite enough for him to go for, but we're going to at least put it out there and see what his reaction is. And he says he's willing to think about it. So I like the fact that it's a contract that's getting a little smaller over the years if we keep him around, which will help as some of our arbitration-eligible players start making more and more money, and not expecting him to fall off a cliff in terms of his ability with the way he's played in the majors over the course of his career, but does give us some protection on the back end as he gets into his mid-30s. So we're going to go ahead and submit that offer to Mr. Ruckle, and we could get 4 years of him for about the same amount of money it would cost for 2 years of Lorne Walbourne at this point. And the first one of our free agents is signed with another team, Max Clark, who there was no way we were going to bring back. Ended up not getting crazy money from St. Louis, $23 million a year for 5 years. But given that he is wrecked physically and he'll be 34 years old before the start of the season, did not think that that was money well spent. Certainly don't think that Romero or Rojas, the guys that we picked up to help give us a little more offense from our outfield, are going to produce the way Max Clark has at peak value. But heading into his mid-30s with a proclivity towards injuries, I'm not sure that Max Clark over the next 4 or 5 years is going to be the same player that he was over the past 4 or 5 years. And we've just run our third camp with international amateur free agents. Still have the camp that we can run in January, and we will run in January. We ended up pivoting away from a couple of the higher regarded everyday players that we had looked at to start things off. Some of them had some personality quirks. Some of them were just looking for even more money than some of the 4 guys that we're still scouting among everyday players. But according to our scout, and this is now with high scouting accuracy, there's 4 5-star players that we're still investigating. And then we've moved on to have 6 pitchers in camp the last 2 sessions. Luis Cesena, clearly the highest ceiling, at least according to our scouts, but a few other interesting players that we're going to continue to monitor and scout over the next 5 or 6 weeks until we get to the start of international amateur free agency. So for those of you who like to think about these international amateur free agent periods and share your suggestions, hopefully this about a month before that time will give a more nuanced view, since we know a lot more about these players. Juan Castaneda is a 16-year-old starting pitching prospect. Looks like if he fully develops, he's a borderline 5th starter. Certainly question whether he might end up in the bullpen if that changeup does not develop. Jesus Avina, 16-year-old out of the Dominican. He's a guy who just the lack of quality of some of his pitches scared us off in our initial review of the players. Don't think his stuff is going to be quite major league quality, but he does have some positive personality traits. We're honestly hoping that maybe we had been off a little in terms of analyzing some of his pitches, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to be the case. Edgar Toscano, 17-year-old pitching prospect, pretty well-balanced prospect. Looks like he's got 3 pitches not far off major league quality. He's durable, has some stamina, excellent at holding runners, some pretty positive personality traits. He's certainly, to me, the strongest of these 3, but not surprisingly, the league interest in him is the highest, and he's also looking for the biggest ticket among those players. Jesus Collado is the cheapest guy we're looking at. Does also have some positive personality traits. Looks like his stuff could be really good. Need to hope that the movement and control maybe end up being a little better than we hoped. He's also a little bit older at around 18 and a half. Another 18-year-old, Luis Cervantes, also not looking for a ton of money. Some personality traits that are positive. Another 3-pitch guy with 3 pitches that we think are pretty decent at this point. So both of those guys could be bargain guys to go after if we don't end up spending all or most of our money on one big name. But the 5 guys that we haven't talked about are pretty big names and certainly intriguing in some ways. Luis Cesena, the top pitching prospect, excellent stamina. He's got 3 pitches and a 4th pitch if that changeup develops. His stuff and his control both look like they could be excellent and also could have plus movement on his pitches. Clearly the highest ceiling of any of the pitchers. The question is whether, you try to get 2 out of 3 out of a Cervantes, Collado, and Toscano instead of putting all your eggs in one basket with Cesena, who's likely to end up going for full price. Unfortunately, this year, as I talked about a few episodes ago, for whatever reason, we do have a mid-range international amateur free agent budget this year of $5.23 million, not the minimum $4.75. I guess that must have something to do with the finances of our organization, because we have been, as I talked about, a perennial playoff team and a perennial contender, and we're coming off a year when we led the league in wins. So other stuff goes into that equation, but that does give us a little more flexibility if we want to go for a high-end guy this year who we think might take $4.75 million plus. We can compete on those players to an extent this year. Turning to the four position players, all 16 years old. Juan Godinez, a right field prospect, like the high work ethic. Don't love the defense, but certainly with that 80 contact, 70 home run power, and the durability, if he reaches his full potential, he is potentially a devastating offensive force. Juan Toledo is another guy, if he reaches his full potential, 80 contact, 80 home run power, absolutely incredible. Like that he's got high leadership and work ethic, a little bit of speed, probably a right fielder rather than a center fielder, but another guy who the high end of Toledo is pretty impressive to me. And both of those guys, not surprisingly, looking for $3 million plus a year. Probably will go for every penny we have available to go after either of them. Fidel Mancias, a 16-year-old catcher. I think at this point that his ability defensively is a little bit above average arm, but potential 75 contact, 75 home run power, and durable. If he completely develops, this is a guy who is a very valuable player. Unfortunately, don't know a lot about his personality and doesn't seem to have any extreme traits, positive or negative, in terms of his personality. And last but certainly not least, Luis Hernandez, another guy with excellent contact, potentially excellent gap power, and probably the most well-rounded hitter, who we even think his home run power, his eye, and his avoid strikeout ratings could all be average to a little bit above. Also a player with high work ethic, good speed, good bunter, decent outfield range, probably really a right fielder when all is said and done, although could play him in center. But I'm intrigued by a lot of these guys. Hernandez, Toledo, probably the two position players I like the most. Cesena, if I'm going to go with a pitcher. And then, as I mentioned, Cervantes, Collado, and Toscana, if I decide to go more bargain basement. But given that this is a rather unique year for Buffalo, where we have the ability to outbid the majority of teams in the league that have the $4.75 million cap, I'm thinking it may be a year for us to go big on one of the guys that we think is a 5-star prospect. So we will continue scouting them over the next month. We'll run them through one more camp in the beginning of January, and we'll focus on those decisions in a subsequent episode, most likely our next episode. But if you've got plans on which direction you think we should go, as I mentioned, always helpful for me to hear them. And Nate Ruckle has finally gotten back to us and says that he favors our offer at this point. Nothing's happened with Walborn yet. Kind of interesting that our assistant GM thinks we should look into bringing Shamar back. He was a huge part of the two world championships we won in the 3 years that he was with us, but is now fragile in terms of his injury proneness, and his performance has really dropped off these last couple seasons since he opted out of his contract with us and signed with Boston. He's a guy who's still making $39 million this year, and then in the low 30s and mid 20s the 3 years after that. We are not going to engage with Boston on bringing him on board. I guess, it's worth engaging if they're willing to keep his contract. Yeah, we don't have anyone who makes it work, and that's really just driven by the fact that he's making such insane money. I think in those out years, we've got so little money available that there's just nothing to do to make it work. Well, if they keep every penny, nobody who makes it work then. They're obviously looking to get rid of some of his contract. But if we could have picked up Generette for free, certainly would have been something to think about. We add in one of the top prospects in our system in Guadalupe Amezcua, and still nobody. Luis Nava. We drop it to them keeping 60% of his money. Yeah, it's not realistic. If we could have got him for almost nothing, I certainly would love to roll the dice on that bat. But given he's fragile, given he's in his mid-30s, and given his performance is not been the same since he left us, interesting that our scout would recommend him, but not a direction I see us traveling. And we have signed our replacement for Lorne Walbourne, Nate Ruckle. The contract has been signed. As I talked about, I think that's a pretty solid deal for us with the way it's structured, a lot more reasonable than even we had perhaps hoped to sign Walborn for if he did come in and look for a little less in free agency than he had been looking for from us when he was under our control. So happy to have Ruckle on board. That's probably going to be the big move for us this off season. Still more than happy to check in on people. We'll check in again on Mr. Walborn at this point. And his numbers come down to $9 million a year over 3 years. Not willing to do that, but we could have both Ruckle and Walborn. That's even a better team. I don't think we're at a point where we can get him for the type of money we'd be willing to pay, but I'm at least going to throw something at the wall. And I have a hard time imagining this is going to go anywhere. He's looking for $9.1 million a year over 3 years. He was looking for much more than that a few weeks ago. We're offering him $6 million average over 3 years. I don't think that's even going to get him to really engage with us, but I won't call it a Hail Mary, but we'll at least try to do something to keep the discussion with Walborn going. Yeah, he's insistent on $9.1 million. So at least we've talked with him. He knows that we're amenable to him coming back, but it's going to have to be closer to our money. It's conceivable he ends up signing somewhere else now that we're at the start of the winter meetings, but at least we can tell our fans we did put an offer out there to Lorne Walbourne. And Lorne Walbourne was not lying when he said he had an offer from another team. The fans unhappy to see him go, but he went back to the LA Dodgers, which is who we traded for him a few years ago. 8.4, 8.4, and 7.4, so an average of a little over $8 million a year over 3 years for Mr. Walborn. Definitely will leave a mark in our bullpen just in terms of the volume he pitched and how productive he was pitching that volume. That said, I'm intrigued to see what Ruckle can do for us. I think he could be the new version of Lorne Walbourne. I think his overall pitching profile is a little better. He throws slightly harder. He does not have the same kind of stamina as Walborn. I don't know if he's going to hold up, as I said, to 140 innings, but I think he could be a pretty interesting guy in our bullpen for this upcoming season. So, Lorne Walbourne, we wish you the best, and Nate Ruckle, we hope you perform better than Lorne Walbourne going forward. And we've made it ahead to the Rule 5 draft, so we'll find out whether there's any talent that we can use to supplement our pitching staff here, as we often have been in recent years. 32nd pick in the draft for us based on having had the best regular season record this past season. And there are definitely a couple of players we are intrigued about here with our 32nd pick. Scouting director recommends we do nothing, and I'm going to disagree with that because I'm pretty intrigued by Jorge Romero. The Yankees are a loaded roster. They had 104 wins this past year. We clinched the best record in baseball over them the final day of the season. Romero split last year between AA and AAA, where he ended up hitting 40 homers combined. I don't really understand why they wouldn't save him on their 40-man roster. Now, he is older. He's almost 25 years old, so he's not viewed as a top prospect, but certainly feel like that bat could be in the mix as a fourth or fifth outfielder for us. No guarantees with the trades that we've made that he's going to make our 26-man roster, but I'm willing to certainly bring a guy like him into camp and see whether or not maybe it works out. And here in the second round, fortunately for us, the other guy that we were intrigued by is still on the board. I guess it's not a surprise because we were picking last in the first round, so if someone really loved him, they probably would have picked him already, but certainly a chance that if there was a team who picked somebody and they had their eye on him, he wouldn't fall to us. But Mike Ashley is a 25-year-old, split last year between A-ball and high A-ball, although he did make it to double A-ball the year before. Looks like a back of the bullpen kind of guy, but his profile and the fact that he throws in the mid to high 90s and the fact that he's durable certainly makes him a guy that I'm willing to at least bring into camp. Don't know that I'll end up making the 26-man roster, but happy to have a little bit of extra depth in spring training, and who knows, maybe one of these guys will end up sticking on the 26-man roster. And third round, there's another pitcher we'll at least bring into camp. Don't know if he'll make the team, but Juan Puente of the Red Sox looks like he could be a useful right-handed arm out of the bullpen. Put up a 3.78 ERA in 64 and a third innings with Boston last year, and he's been with them for parts of the last two seasons. Our pitching is so good, I don't know that he'll make the 26-man roster, but happy to have him in camp, given his skill set and some positive personality traits from Mr. Puente. And kind of an interesting draft, even though we had the last selection in every round and we're coming off the best record in baseball. We picked up 3 different players, and there were 5 other players picked before we were on the board. Yankees lose another pitcher with Yahim DeShazor, second baseman, young first baseman Rojas. Interesting, but not that exciting. Josh Oster and Josh Jarvis also selected. So feel like between Romero, Ashley, and Puente, no guarantee that any of them make our 26-man roster, but in a, I guess, best case scenario for the guys we picked up, could one of the 2 pitchers be on our pitching staff, and could Romero be on our team as a 4th or 5th outfielder? I don't think it's impossible. And with the Rule 5 draft complete and the departure of Walborn complete, I think it's time to finish up the episode. You can see we boosted our scouting and development budgets back to at least reasonable levels. Still do have a little bit of money to play with now, and fortunately for us, with the fact that we did offload some of those contracts of guys who are going to be making more and more money in arbitration in the coming years, we've actually got money available for extensions right now too. We're not in a horrible salary situation at about $158 for this upcoming year, and then about 169 for next season. Clearly, when we're looking out to 2041, there's a lot of team options that we're going to have some interesting decisions to make on, as well as a lot of arbitration eligible players whose numbers will be getting higher. But right now, we have, with the moves that we've made, at the very least, got the financial situation back under the control. And we do have flexibility to perhaps bring on somebody in trade or play in the free agent market in the coming weeks and months. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.